Hi, y'all. Welcome back to Gen X Life Lab. A few nights ago, I had a dream. And it was one of those dreams that sticks with you the entire next day. Believe it or not, I was in a race. It wasn't a normal race, though. It was kind of like, is that television show even on? The one called The Amazing Race? I used to love watching that. But it's where there are dozens of people competing and you all have to race to these checkpoints, and then you have this task to do before you can move on. So as soon as the person at the starting line shot the gun, everybody took off. And we were all in cars. Some people had really fancy ones, really fast ones. Other people had the best they could do. But we all took off. Well, everybody else did. And I was watching their taillights disappear, and I'm kind of taking my time. I'm in this little bitty lime green car that's kind of a cross between a golf cart and a UTV. So it was a souped up golf cart, so to speak. But I'm looking around at all the buildings and taking my time and meandering along and enjoying stuff that I'm seeing. People would wave at me as I drove by, and I'd wave back and smile. And I didn't care. I was sightseeing. Everybody else seemed focused on getting somewhere and getting there fast. But I was looking around, exploring. And you know, something about that really resonated with me. Because the older I get, the more I wonder if that's exactly what's happening in my life right now. What if the reason so many of us feel left behind isn't because we're failing? What if it's because we've spent decades measuring ourselves against people who are running a completely different race? So I want to talk about that. So as I said, everybody took off. Everybody's hurrying to get to the checkpoint. I'm taking my time, and I get there, and of course everybody else is already there. So I'm talking with people and chit-chatting and stuff, and there's this one guy. We had talked a little bit before the race started, and he had told me that his father's very wealthy, and I could tell by the little car that he was driving because it was very souped up. It was like a little mini race car. And he was kind of flirty, and I was kind of flirty back, but I knew it was just nothing. I mean, it was just flirtation. Didn't have any meaning to it at all. So then the next day, we have to do the activity. And the activity that they take us to, it was like something out of a Donkey Kong developer's brain on steroids. It was like this huge construction site where there were crane arms all over the place that would swing around, and some of them had the wrecking balls on them, and there were ramps, and there were, the crisscross beams going up, and there were all kinds of obstacles and pitfalls. So I'm cruising through there. But again, everybody else, as soon as the gun goes off, they're taking off and trying to find their way through. And I just kind of meander along. I see this ramp, and I go up the ramp, and I'm looking out across, and I'm like, wow, look at all of that. I can see really far, and just amazed at everything around me. So then I'm almost to the top of the ramp, and there's this crane arm, and I bash right into it, and it goes swinging around. And I'm watching it, and then I turn back, and I realize there's nothing but air in front of me. So I hit my brakes. And the first two, my front wheels go off of the edge. So I step out of the car, but there's no saving it, and it goes over the edge, falling down in this huge black hole like a giant abyss. And I was just like, oh, okay. So I turn and walk back down the ramp, and I go find one of the workers, and I tell them what happened, and they're like, oh, well, there's no getting that car back now. And I was sad because it was a cute little lime green car, but it obviously wasn't meant to transport me anymore. So I just kind of shrugged my shoulders and said, oh, well. So I'm standing there with the worker, and the rich guy comes zooming back by, and he hits his brakes. And he's like, are you okay? Because he sees I'm without my little green car. I said, yeah, I'm fine. And he says, okay, and he zooms off. But I don't think my dream was really about racing. I think it was about comparison. because it's something that I've been feeling in myself quite a bit. I wanted to start a YouTube channel for a couple of years now to talk about these kinds of things. But I, did my research, did my due diligence, and was looking around at what everybody else was doing. And I kept being drawn to the guru sphere. And what I mean by that is, I'm sure you've seen the videos where somebody will show you some quick ChatGPT prompt and you can plug it in and you can go start a website, and they show you this example of somebody who's making $10,000 a day or $2 million a year or whatever. And the reality is that they're not doing those things. They might do it as their example, but they don't follow through with it. They're not making their money off of those things. They're making their money off of your views. You're purchasing their courses and you're joining their inner circles. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing. Because I think that in some ways they can provide a lot of food for thought. If you're not sure what you want to do, they can provide some interesting ideas and thoughts because they point out creative ways to make money online. And I think that's very valuable. But that wasn't what I wanted to do. Because I'm all about, yes, finding creative ways to make money, especially, as I said, as I'm heading towards retirement. I don't want to keep working at a regular, 9-to-5 job. I don't want to keep having to commute into work every day. I don't want those things. I want to make money doing things that I enjoy, that are fun, that are creative, that make me feel better about the world and myself rather than feeling stuck all the time. So I've done it. I've done the looking around and feeling behind because, like I said, I've been thinking about this for 2 years. For the first year, it was me being afraid of putting my face in front of the camera because I'm like, nobody's going to want to look at that. But I decided, okay, it's time to get over yourself. And about the time I did that was when my mother passed away last year on Mother's Day. And as I've mentioned in previous videos, for the rest of 2025, I was kind of checked out and kind of useless. I'd go to work, I'd do my job, but the rest of the time I was just kind of grumpy and going through grief. So that's why I decided if you're going to do it, you need to do it now. You need to get over yourself, and you need to do it now because you've been thinking about doing it for a long time, so do it. And I think a lot of us fall into those midlife comparison traps. Especially with social media. We see all of these beautifully creative lives on social media, but even though we know it, we don't really stop to be aware of it in the front part of our brain, that most of those lives are highly curated. They only show you what they want you to see. They don't show you the reality of their world, but they show you what's going to look good on social media. You may have friends that appear highly successful, but you don't know what goes on behind closed doors with them. They may hate that job, but they keep doing it because it pays them a lot of money. We grew up believing that hard work would eventually make everything make sense. Then we got here and discovered life doesn't work like a vending machine. You can't take the quarter or 25 years of work and stick it into a vending machine and push a button and have everything you ever wanted. It doesn't work that way. So maybe you're not behind. Maybe you're just finally asking better questions. So during this race, the pressure was evident. Everybody was pushing to keep climbing, keep producing, keep getting through this maze, keep achieving, let's get to the next step. And if that's how you want to live your life, there's nothing wrong with it. But that's not how I want to live my life anymore. We've spent years being responsible, being the good employee, the good spouse, the good parent, the good son, the good daughter. And then one day we wake up and realize we've been so busy meeting expectations that we've lost contact with ourselves. So the goal isn't really to find yourself. The goal in my mind is to stop abandoning yourself because you know who you are. You know the things you enjoy. So I want to ask you, What are you racing toward right now? And what would happen if you slowed down long enough to ask yourself whether you really wanted that thing or not? Do you still want to make it to that destination? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. You know, I don't think midlife is a crisis. That's a cliche term. Everybody has a midlife crisis. I think it's a construction zone, because you're looking around realizing that the things that you used to think that you wanted, because that's what everybody told you you should want, don't work anymore. So it's time to do a little reinvention, a little remodeling. And midlife can feel unfinished. It can be messy. It can be loud. It can be constantly changing. You know, we expect reinvention to feel inspiring. But most of the time, it feels like wandering through that construction zone, wearing the wrong shoes, looking out for obstacles, waiting for the gorilla to throw a barrel at you and that's going to roll down and squash you. But what if feeling lost is actually evidence that you're finally paying attention? You know, as things change in our life, as our kids grow up and we start experiencing an empty nest, they might still need us, but not the way they used to. We're realizing that, why am I still working at this job that I've hated for 20 years? Our identity starts to shift. But we also look around and see retirement looming in the future and think, am I really prepared for that? So I want to point out to you the thing that happened in the dream, which most people would find to be the most upsetting. The car fell. But you know what? The car fell. I didn't. So I've tried on a lot of things in my life. Some of them have done well. Some of them, several of them, have not. Or they've done well and I just decided that it wasn't a good fit for me. And that's okay. We can look at the things in our life and start looking at, does this really fit me anymore? You know, sometimes the thing falling apart isn't your life. It's just a part of your life. It's the identity that got you here. But maybe it's an identity that didn't really fit you in the first place. So I want to ask you, what vehicle are you still trying to drag forward, even though it no longer fits who you are? I mean, you remember when we were in high school and going to our first prom, and we would try on dresses, we would try on suits, and sometimes it would take several times to find the one that fit. You're at a point in your life where it's time for a new, exciting prom, a new phase. And I want you to start getting excited about things that you could try on to see if they're going to fit. Because why not now? If you're feeling dissatisfied, you're the only person who can change that. So, and I don't want you to measure it by anybody else's standards. Because like in my dream, the guy in the fancy car that had his father's money, that kept zooming around and he stopped by to check on me, but I knew in my dream that that wasn't what I wanted. So you may look around at your friends and see they have the bigger house, they have the bigger life that appears to be a bigger life, they have a bigger audience on YouTube, but they're not actually living a life that you'd want to live. So what version of success have you been trying to convince yourself that you want? But if you stop for 2 minutes and think about it, really think about it, do you really want it? So, like in my dream, because there were times that I had to make the decision, do I want to go this way or that way? Midlife eventually becomes a series of moments where you stop doing what everyone expects you to do and take care of what you actually need. It's okay to put up boundaries. You know, if your kids are grown but still living in your home, it's okay to give them responsibilities. Just because they're living at home doesn't mean you need to treat them like they're still 10. If they're 21 and still living in your house, graduated from college and have a job, they can do their own laundry. They can put gas in their own car. It's okay to put a boundary. You don't have to keep sacrificing yourself to meet everyone else's needs. If you're exhausted, it's okay to take a rest. If you've been neglecting yourself and putting everybody else first, it's okay to stop and have some self-care. So maybe we're not behind. Maybe we're not lost. Maybe we're just in the middle of rebuilding a life that actually fits. You don't need a 5-year plan. You just need the courage to run one experiment. And that's what this is all about. You know, experiments, they have often been viewed as success or fail by people from the outside. But if you look at the people truly running the experiments, they're looking for data. So even if an experiment doesn't succeed, they get more information to make their efforts even better in the future. Or maybe it succeeds and they decide this isn't the outcome that we had hoped for, so they pull back and do something different. You don't need to make a decision and believe that this is a thing that I have to do forever. That's just trading what you already have for something different, and that's not the goal here. It's to see if it's something that you enjoy, that you're going to enjoy continuing to do, that makes you happy, that makes you feel fulfilled, that makes you feel at peace. That's the goal. So I have a few questions, and you can answer them in the comments if you want to. But question number 1, have you ever had a dream that felt more honest than your waking life? What are you racing toward right now? What vehicle in your life no longer fits who you are becoming? Have you ever realized that you were chasing someone else's definition of success? What's one experiment you would run if failure wasn't part of the equation? If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear your story. Not the polished version, not the LinkedIn version, the real version. What part of your life feels like a construction zone right now? What are you questioning? What are you rebuilding? Leave a comment below and let me know. Because one of the things I'm learning through all of these experiments is that a lot of us are walking through the same uncertainty. We just think we're doing it alone, and we're not.